I'm a graduate assistant down in the South Dakota Oral History Center, but I'm also 6 months pregnant, and I'm really excited to be working down here with the great archival collection that they have. But at the same time, I am aware of the health hazards, and it does make me very cautious because I know of people who have had problems in the past.
I came down with my brother to meet with, or he came down with me. I was going to meet with my academic advisor and figure out my fall schedule.
When I went downstairs with my sister Sarah, she went down there and said, "We go visit Charlie, my old mentor, and I went to Upward Bound to go see him." But I went down there. As soon as I probably took maybe 2 steps towards his office, I took a real big breath and I smelled the mold and everything. I was like Sarah, I have to leave. I can't be in here. I can smell that mold and it's giving me a hard time breathing. So I went outside. I had to use my inhaler, and so we went home and got home probably around 4 o'clock. Got home. I used my nebulizer. Did that for about an hour, and then around midnight, 1 o'clock, I went to the hospital to get a treatment. I had to have a treatment. I got shots. They gave me steroids for my asthma to get my bronchial tubes to open up so I can breathe more.
A physical effect on the students and the physical effect on people working in American Indian Studies Department. You know, that could be called environmental racism. There's a term for that. There, you know, people who, minority groups especially, who in the United States will generally live in isolated areas and will generally live in very contaminated areas.
We don't even realize that we're basically sitting around toxins all the time. However, here, just like a good, or a bad HUD house, for any of you who know, what it's like to have res houses built, and they're, huge problems with mold, right? That mean that people are just living and breathing things that are killing them, and people aren't all that concerned about it, unfortunately. And by people, I basically mean federal government and related representatives. So that, one of the strongest things the university could do symbolically is move us out of here.
As new Native freshmen walk across campus and they see all these new buildings being built, and then they come down to the American Indian Studies Department and they see it's in the basement, it's very disheartening, and it seems as though we don't matter as much to the university. They use the argument that the AIS department does not have a sufficient number of students to gain funding to receive a new building, but in fact, we are a growing department, and we do deserve modern facilities.
I did know about the American Indian Studies Department when I came here, but I assumed to be well-funded and well-staffed with a large faculty, and that because the University of South Dakota is one of the leading liberal arts colleges probably in the state, it would have probably the leading American Indian Studies program, probably in the nation too, because it's right in the heart of Indian country.
The university, by virtue of having the program in the basement, is no different than how Native knowledge has been dismissed in public schools, in other colleges and universities, and if we think about it, maybe even the boarding schools back in the day.
Overall, that is probably one of the most productive parts of colonization for the colonizers, is that we don't think about that stuff, that we don't think this is really messed up, this shouldn't be happening, that we get so used to being oppressed and put in a disadvantaged position as we don't see it as being disadvantaged. We see it as being normal.
That the University of South Dakota, how could they not be the leader in the country in American Indian Studies? And of course, unfortunately, it's not that it's a false assumption. It's just the fact that the university has not been sufficiently supportive of building the program, of recruiting students, and of making it a place that people want to come to. Because there's a long history right now of USD being a really Native unfriendly place.
We contacted USD's chemistry department and asked for their assistance in conducting an analysis of the environmental toxins in Dakota Hall's basement. The chemistry department never responded to our request. Therefore, we took the burden of proof upon ourselves as students to prove that environmental toxins do exist in the location of USD's American Indian Studies Department, as well as the South Dakota Oral History Center, and purchased do-it-yourself testing kits at the local hardware store to test for mold.
We conducted 2 mold tests using different methods. The first method consisted of setting up an open petri dish next to the Oral History Center archives, exposing the dish to an air sampling. The second method required taking a physical sample of visible mold by wiping a swab of the mold growth onto a petri dish.
The air sample resulted in the growth of 1 colony of the spore Alternaria, a human pathogen that causes hay fever and pneumonitis, and 2 colonies of Cladosporium, a type of mold that can result in bronchospasms and pulmonary emphysema. The visual sample concluded the presence of Cladosporium as well as the spore Acremonium, a type of mold that can cause allergic reactions such as hay fever and pneumonitis.
A diversity statement on the University of South Dakota website states that at USD we recognize our leadership responsibility to the rich and unique heritage of our state, and that we have a special responsibility to provide opportunities for American Indian people.
In 2004, the University of South Dakota wanted to make a move to Division I athletics. And in order to do that, the NCAA came to do a diversity survey and determined that the campus was indeed incredibly undiverse. And I believe there was some language in the report that said the campus was hostile. The university responded immediately. Obviously, it was a really important goal to move to Division I. And they made some really good efforts. They hired a diversity officer and came out with rhetoric like everybody belongs at the university, encouraging that. However, since that time, very little changes have occurred.
And we comprise at least 13% of the state's population. Then naturally, they have a mandate to go ahead and try to bring Native peoples to campus.
When we did the diversity campus climate survey that we're in the process of right now, and we had focus groups, there were a lot of non-Native students that said that they had grown up around reservations or grown up around Native people, but they actually have never even talked to a Native person, not even once.
Well, I grew up in South Dakota. I grew up in Flanders, which has a reservation on the in the town, so it's a border town, I guess. And learned like nothing about South Dakota history growing up in Flanders or the reservation in town. And I had to leave the state to actually learn the history of the historical importance of the place I grew up in.
The white population is actually decreasing in the state because more and more whites are moving out of the state, whereas Native people are still living here because we're going to school and returning to our reservations or wherever we come from.